Before we start today's episode, just a note that we will be talking about some serious themes in the stories today, including self-harm. If that is not something that you want to engage with, please take care of yourself, and we'll see you next week.
You're listening to a Comics XF podcast.
X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast. We rank every story from A to Z.
I'm Adam.
And I'm the bad boy of X-Men podcasting. I'm a werewolf wearing human skin. I'm Zach. Hi, Adam.
Zach, you sound, like a forlorn, forgotten mutant. Maybe nobody remembers your name. So sad.
You know what? That would be really sad. And the thing is, Adam, thank you for bringing that up. No, that's just how I sound sometimes. Sometimes I am just a little depressed and I don't know what to do. And maybe like if people just took my hobbies seriously, maybe then if they knew that these were big boy comics for grown big boys like me, that they would, I don't know, treat me better, I guess. Maybe my life would be better. And that's what I think we're going to try and bring to the table today.
Yeah, is that the theme? Like, I feel like as we were reading these stories, several themes developed. Some good, some bad.
Several themes developed accidentally. The one where a bunch of kids die in every issue, that developed accidentally. That was a oops, didn't think that one through.
We didn't mean for that to happen. But the theme was supposed to be comics a kid might give a grown-up to show comics can be important, right?
Yes. Which, by the way, folks, I'm gonna shout out Patreon supporter Ian Jackson here for a second.
Yeah.
Ian's doing it right. That is a wildly specific request. That is not I like Wolverine. Buds, you know how
Do you know how many Wolverine comics there are? It's quite a few. Which Wolverine?
Little that narrows things down. Comics that a kid might give a grown-up to show comics can be important. That's so both open to interpretation and incredibly specific that it gives us we can find the 3 X-Men stories that fit this in a heartbeat. We actually had 6 that we were juggling through.
Yeah. We found some good ones. So to Ian's theme, I just wanted to maybe ask you, I know when I was a kid and I was reading comic books, the way in which I kind of convinced my parents that they weren't just like drivel, was honestly, there was a lot of vocabulary in them that I didn't know. I was like, forget how old I was when Infinity Gauntlet came out, and I was like, Mom, Dad, what's nihilism? And like they'd be like, wait, what's going on in these comic books? So I don't know, how did it work for you? Like, did you have to convince your family that this wasn't trash?
I'll start by saying I love the idea of your parents having to explain nihilism to you.
That's great.
That's beautiful. I recently had to explain the Jimmy Kimmel situation to my son. Yeah. And here's the part of that situation. We had a very good conversation about like what is the role of government and what does free speech mean, but also, and this is so important because I couldn't lose street cred with my 9-year-old. I did have to explain to him, but I don't like Jimmy Kimmel. I think Jimmy Kimmel is pretty mediocre. And I have a better sense of humor than that. And then as I said that, I was like, my kid doesn't know that Jimmy Kimmel hosted the Man Show. Like he doesn't know any of this stuff. I don't need to impress him.
This is very topical humor. Like for someone binging this in a year, they're like,
I love it. No, people love it. But I had a thing today where I was talking to some friends, be like, wait, did this one weirdly specific thing happen 5 years ago? Or am I mixing 4 like disparate thoughts in brain soup. And like, I love recollecting on these, what are hopefully minor footnotes on history.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to go back to your question, no, I didn't have to convince my parents because my parents divorced when I was 5. So it was really easy to let the little things slide. They were like, whatever, he's happy. I didn't read all that many comics as a kid, to be honest.
So not a lot of convincing had to happen. Did
not
Ian...
a huge... Oh, I was just going to say, not a huge amount of comics.
No.
But like at a certain point, it was, well, he's reading.
Exactly. Well, that's not bad either, right? Did Ian request this first story specifically, or just the theme? And we went with it.
That's a great question. Both. Ian said, jumping off this comic, this is a great theme idea. And I said, perfect. Because Ian Jackson went on over to patreon.com/Battle of the Atom, reached deep down into their hearts and pocketbooks, and tossed a couple of coins directly into our coffers. If you want to be like Ian, you can go to that website at the $5 a month level. You'll get to make a request, and we'll do a request based around something you want. It's really exciting, and I love the idea of doing requests. So request stuff.
Way cheaper than a Disney Plus subscription right now. So
topical.
I don't know. They did a rate increase today. I was like, "What are you doing?"
Oh, did they? I don't know, man.
It's crazy.
Hey, this is wild. The thing about this being so topical is this is actually being recorded before the Jimmy Kimmel show has come back. So just to put a time stamp,
we don't know what's going to happen
on the history of this. This is right now Tuesday, the 23rd. Maybe by the time Adam goes to edit this in the future, he's going to be like, "Oh, we should have avoided that conversation." Who knows, folks? Who knows? But those tough conversations, that is what Ian wants us to talk about today.
Yes.
Specifically, Ian requested a comic that they thought they could give to a grown-up to show that comics could be important when they were younger, and that is New Mutants 45. This is written by the Chris Claremont. It's got pencils by Jackson Geiss.
Mm-hmm.
Butch Geiss.
The late great.
The late great. It has got itself... Wait. Yeah, it's Butch Geiss. Sorry, for a second, I freaked out and wasn't sure if Jackson Geiss and Butch Geiss were like a Buscema situation. They aren't.
They're the same person.
They're just same guy. Same dude. Anyway, long story short, this has a Barry Windsor Smith cover. I will say, before we get into the meat and bones of this, Ian did want us to talk about the cover because we didn't get to talk about the X-Men version of this during Inferno. This is the Marvel 25th anniversary cover frame. All the comics from that month, they had a frame around them. Adam, do you remember this frame?
I remember this being a big deal when they came out because it just looked so cool. The characters usually it's a headshot of, the Thing or Captain America,
Conan the Barbarian, Heathcliff, the Ewoks.
Well, now you're getting into the hard to find ones. But they're surrounded by the X-Men, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, Thor, like all these little portraits. And then, you have this showcase portrait of one of the characters. This one I think is really weird because it's supposed to be magic, but it just kind of looks like one of Barry Windsor Smith's like fantasy illustrations. And
it looks like a woman
and
just
this
any
issue
woman.
Does not, I mean, that magic is in this issue, but she's not the center character of this issue. So it's just a weird choice.
She is the most, I don't know. Is she even she's not even the most visually distinctive New Mutant. I don't know. I don't got anything for this actually. I can't defend this, Barry.
It's an odd choice. Now, as you pointed out,
odd choices sorry, no, you do your thing.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I just wanted to point out that what you were saying before, like there are people that have tried to collect all of these, And the ones that are really tricky to find are like Muppet Babies and like Heathcliff, because those are the like low run star comics that people just didn't have as many copies of. Obviously, they
Right.
were making more copies of Fantastic Four and X-Men than those. So Godspeed to anyone trying to put the full set together. I've seen it happen, but it's not cheap.
I mean, they would have to find the Masters of the Universe one, and that's a tricky
Yeah.
wicket.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You were saying something about, I don't know.
Speaking of odd choices and things that are odd to defend, this issue is New Mutants 45. Folks, this is the Larry Bodine issue. If you don't know what that one is, it's the one where Kitty says every slur.
This comes with a warning
On
on
Marvel
Marvel
Unlimited.
Unlimited.
And I do want to talk about this because this is, when I'm saying odd choices, this is the odd choice that I am most interested in on this. Look, me and Ad were talking earlier. We have touched on some controversial topics the last couple of weeks.
Sure.
And the last thing I want is for this podcast to be about, is it okay to use slurs from two cis straight white guys? Because I think that we're not that. For us, the answer is no. Like, but I do think that Marvel's choice on how they are preserving this comic is interesting. So, as you mentioned, Adam, it starts with kind of a content warning page.
Yes. So when you open the issue on Marvel Unlimited, you get the cover. But then when you flip to the next, it says this previously published content includes negative depictions of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Social change is a journey, and we must acknowledge where we've come from to build a more inclusive future. And I'm glad that we're just talking about this for a second, because I think it's Marvel Unlimited is very much designed for an all ages audience. It does not reprint Max stories. If there is sensitive content inside of an issue, it will edit it out. Anna recently was reading, I believe it was an issue of Byrne's Fantastic Four that featured the N bomb many times printed across the issue in backgrounds and dialogue bubbles. And it was clear through the story that that was wrong, but it was also utilizing that word and printing it. We haven't even talked about why Kitty would be using a wide variety of different slurs
We'll
at the
get
end
to
of this
Kitties.
issue.
We'll get to Kitties. The
Kitty's
why behind
speech,
these things.
her famous speech. But you know, it is interesting to me that this is done in a way that does not preserve the original print of the issue in a way so that it is not, you know, hurting anyone. I don't have anything against that. I just think it's interesting because we can't treat Marvel Unlimited like it's preserving these comics as if they're
Right.
historical objects, because
And
what I said to you was, I feel like 10 people work there. So it's
Yeah,
asking a lot to have them to actually put any kind of historical context, any kind of ancillary stuff around any of these issues, because they just don't have the staff to do that.
on one hand, any criticism that I make here is not criticism of what I assume are the deeply underpaid people that do Marvel Unlimited. I do think that this boilerplate text here of, hey, this is, let's be honest, what they put in front of the Golden Age comics that are super racist.
Yes.
That's not what's happening in this comic. And I think that's a really, like, it's a jarring distinction to make, because when you look at it, it's saying these are negative depictions of people or cultures and these stereotypes are like that. None of that is actually the text and what is concerning about the racial elements of this comic. There is the part where Kitty says a bunch of slurs, which they censor. And I'll be honest, almost to the point of I have no idea what she's saying unless I don't even know what the point of her speech is in some of these cases, unless I already know the speech, which is weird choice here because like they preserve the first letter, which is I generally works, but Claremont throws in some at this point archaic slurs. So now as a guy in 2025, I'm like, which one is this?
Well, and
Like,
we also talked about the fact that, you know, the editing does not eliminate the abbreviated version of Hebrew, which can sometimes be used as a pejorative as well. So it's just interesting to see the way in which it's edited. The
it is.
statement that comes before the comic book is a blanket statement that is used in front of all of them. So no, it's not gonna apply to everything the same way.
I'll tell you, I am of two minds of how they have censored this. One, I'm not a fan of censorship, period. And if they want to do this as a product for children, that's one thing. I think they, I would say, grossly misunderstand who reads their comic books if that's the case. Because I love the children. The children are not reading 80s New Mutants.
No, I doubt that very much.
But I will also say that when we're talking about slurs, like what is the etymological usage of slurs? Or not etymological, but what is the like rhetorical usage of slurs? Why are they like what are they? They are as a literary device, and this is getting very, very high mind brain over here, an academic brain, not smart regular person brain. They are there explicitly to shock. That's what any sort of swear or slur or anything like that is. It's there to shock you. And that is what Claremont is doing here. He is using words that are shocking and hurtful to make a larger point about, hey, don't treat people bad. And it gets into a whole messy thing of how the mutant metaphor can be applied to real world compared to real world groups versus mutants and what's appropriate and what's not. And honestly, a lot of really smart people. A lot more really smart talking about that than me. And you can go to them for any of that content. I will say though that I think that from a pure literary standpoint, this scene is lessened by what they have done to this comic.
It is, but I think the more important thing would be to preserve the issue in a way. Marvel Unlimited is not the correct format to actually preserve the issue in such a way that it could be viewed academically and could be thought about in an intelligent way. Because this issue should be, if you do read the, you know, in its total, and we should probably talk about what the issue is about.
We should probably assume people know that Kitty, at least her heart's in the right place.
Yes, this issue is specifically about a new character named Larry Bodine who is discriminated against because of anti-mutant expression and ends up taking his own life. And which leads to Kitty Pryde then giving a speech at a memorial at a school in which she, you know, equates the idea of quote unquote calling people muties with all of these other ethnic slurs. Now, I think there's a very strong argument that Claremont should not have been using those to illustrate his point here.
I would say that is both fair criticism, but also gets into like a question that is hard to answer for anybody of where do you stop the real world in fiction? Like, if that's really what life is like and really what people are saying and doing, like, do you just censor your fiction for that? It's just because you do not share the same identity. I think it is a much bigger conversation than either of us.
No, I think I'm going to stop you because I do think it's actually a pretty simple thing. You would not go into public and tell people not to use the N-bomb by using the N-bomb. And that is exactly what Kitty does at the end of this issue.
Okay. I want to be clear, Adam. No, you and me are in agreement that in this issue, I would probably have found a different... In fact, I would have found a different way to make this point. I understand what he is doing. I also have a weird hesitancy to say, well, a piece of, like, what should you have to do for a piece of art to be a piece of art? Like, when is it appropriate and when not? I think that's a more open question than in this issue. Should Kitty just open up a slur book and go, every one of these?
Well, and Claremont's already pulled this trick when God
Yeah,
Loves Man Kills. So
it's like,
you know,
he can't do it multiple times.
Yeah,
Someone did have to pull him aside, I'm sure, and be like, Chris, I get you, buddy. I know what you're trying to do. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That's one where an editor should have said, there's a different way to approach this. But I will say, the words are the point of this issue, because this whole issue is about, Larry is a mutant, but he is a closeted mutant.
Yes.
Like, he has not shown it to everybody. And what he's dealing with and what the New Mutants are dealing with is actually something that's, I think, is pretty interesting. It is their reaction to X Factor, the concept of X Factor, the mutant hunters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, by the way, one of their bumper stickers, Cameron Hodge. And actually, no, I blame literally all of you X-Men. You're all smarter than this. It says, quote, "We take care of mutants the old-fashioned way, permanently."
It's pretty brutal.
To the point that Danny Moonstar says, yeah, some things never change. Like, come on, replace a word here.
Yeah. So this is one of those sort of, like, I don't want to call this like an after school special, but it has that kind of feel to it, because we're getting introduced to a brand new character whose only purpose is to be bullied and die.
Yes. And then someone gives a speech about it at the end.
And the character then that we know, who's actually not a character from this book, is going to give the special, this is the point of our story. It's very heavy-handed. I will say at the same time that the character of Larry Bodine is written in a really smart way. We're not given to his fellow students don't know he's a mutant. Right. They are just using anti-mutant hysteria to make fun of him, to bully him, to tease him. And
which I don't know about you growing up, Adam, but I will tell you, there were a lot of people calling people gay. And like Hillary Duff made a commercial about it. It just was a very common thing. I am sure kids are doing this in some way, shape, or form till time immemorial,
Yeah. And Larry is, now feeling like he's being hunted by this X Factor group. He doesn't know what's actually going to happen. He feels like his life is being threatened. You get this idea that Larry's powers are to make light sculptures.
They're nothing. They are not going to hurt anybody.
No, but they're just these beautiful, creations that he makes that disappear the second you touch them. And it's illustrative of what being a mutant in the Marvel universe could mean, that it could be something this benign and yet drive someone to the edge, and drive other people to drive that person to the edge.
Can I tell you what elevates this story for me? What makes me
gonna guess it's when they take Larry back to the X Mansion.
No?
Okay.
Wait,
because
when do they take Larry back to the X Mansion?
After the party is over, he does go back with Kitty to the X Mansion. They hang out, and what Larry does when he gets there,
I did not. You know what that is? I read that as, for some reason, like they just went to a different play, like they just went outside to a different part of the school. Okay, yes, it is that scene,
but that's the scene, right? Yeah, go ahead.
That is the scene, because what you get is these people, Larry doesn't know they're mutants. They don't know Larry's a mutant, but they are being kind to him. They are being open to him. And what he does, because by the way, all the kids are very drunk. That's the other thing. All the kids, the punch at the dance got spiked. They are all drunk. At least Kitty and Larry are, if not a few others.
Mm-hmm.
Sam knew exactly what he was doing and went back for like thirds. He's a Kentucky boy. He's on top of this stuff. But Larry repeats a joke that the cool kids who were making fun of him said. How many mutants does it take to screw in a light bulb? By the way, they don't need light bulbs full. They glow in the dark. Claremont had a blast with that. He was having fun.
Yes.
He was having his own sort of fun on that. But not knowing that they are mutants, Larry just he does a I think you should leave to the party is what happens.
Well, everybody's out. Not only has he been teased, but this new group that's accepted him is now, rejecting him, and he doesn't really know why. So, we're getting all of these aspects. I do think that, the aspects that are talking about the nature of bullying are really well done here. Yes. I just think that the way Claremont handles the end of the issue with Kitty, who does not go to the school where Larry goes.
The end of this is
gets
insane.
Up on stage and says this speech.
They find out she's a mutant. They find out he's a mutant after he kills himself. He kills himself that night, finds out they're a mutant. It's not at the school. It is at a... Oh, wait, no, it is.
It sure looks like it's at the school. I think they're on stage in the auditorium.
I accidentally clicked to the scene before, and it was at a Sears. And as I said that, it's like, why would the auditorium be at a Sears? Anyway, cut out all the Sears.
Her giving this speech.
She's at this. She doesn't even go here. She knew this kid for a few hours,
a night at most,
and here's the thing. For some reason, she goes out there, puts on her glasses, and gives a speech where she talks about... It's a very Kitty Pryde speech. In fact, it might be the most Kitty Pryde speech. Mm-hmm. I think the Bendis one is up there for most Kitty Pryde speech, but this one might be right there. She talks about all the words that could be used to hurt her personally, words that can be used to hurt others, which that's where probably, Kitty, we didn't need to add all those into the mix.
Nope.
And her point is that those words hurt and they dehumanize people, and you can't do that. And then she talks about, Larry was a great, beautiful person and didn't have anyone to turn to. And it kind of ends on a weird note. Like it's the most after school special last page to end on.
It's very much the CW episode that would end in a, here's a suicide hotline if you're, worried about, or, you're questioning these things or whatever. So it has a good message. It is just the way in which Claremont does it and executes it is questionable.
Can I ask you about that message and your thoughts on it?
Yeah.
Not that bullying's bad. Me and Adam, again, pro-bullying, anti-slur podcast. Nope.
We're not pro-bullying.
Anti-bullying, anti-slur podcast.
Sure.
She ends her speech with what I think is a very interesting panel. She says, "You want to know who I am? I'm Catherine Pryde. That's the only thing that matters. The rest are just labels." Now, Adam, why is this different than Havoc's speech?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because I read both of them, and this one reads very different than Havoc's speech. And I have thoughts on why, especially because I could imagine that Rick Remender was like, X-Men speech, like, what's a good X-Men speech for this book? And this famous one came up, and like, it's an easy thought to have, but I could easily see that, like, this is in line with everything, but it is.
I'll tell you the difference. I know the difference.
Yes.
I mean, the difference comes down to what they're actually talking about.
Yes.
Now, what Havoc was talking about in his speech, the M word is mutant. He is not talking about mutants in a pejorative way by saying mutie, which is the focus of what Kitty is talking about. Kitty is not saying, don't call me a mutant. She's saying, don't call me mutie, because I don't appreciate it, because, all of you wouldn't want to be called
Hey, Kitty, just by the way, if your point is all of you wouldn't want to be called all of these things, do not list every single one.
Don't say them out loud.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
So that's the core difference. And that's why, at least the meaning of this, as opposed to the actual execution, it I think works.
That's the thing.
Claremont, he probably could have used some more editorial oversight on this from Nascenti.
This issue is messy, but its heart's in the right place. And I think that, like, again, that helps me feel a certain way about this issue. I think where it works, it really works. And where it doesn't, it's rough. Adam, where do we rank comics like that?
Well, we are going to rank this comic on our big old list. Do you want to tell them about it?
Yeah, here's the thing about our big list. We've been ranking 1,080 X-Men comics. From best to worst, the best being the House of X, the Powers of 10, the 250th best being that Morph issue of Bendis Uncanny, the 500th best being the Savage Avengers 1-5 City of Sickles, 750th being Cyclops Retribution, the 1,000th X-Men comic of all time is SFX. That's from Fraction Brubaker Uncanny, and the worst X-Men comic of all time, 2099 World of Tomorrow. This is better than 500.
Yeah, I'm looking down a variety of different New Mutant stories that we have on the list. I would say this is better than at 400. We have New Mutants 53 to 54, the scavenger hunt with the Hellions. Say this is better than that.
It's better than that. You have highlighted New Mutants 38 and 40. That is the aftermath of, what is that? Is that after Secret Wars?
I believe that's after Secret Wars 2.
Yeah, it's not as good as that.
No, I don't think it is. So we're in between there. So I'm looking in.
Adam, how does this compare to Web of Venom Venom, where Venom's in the Vietnam War?
I think that's actually better.
Yeah.
It's not as
Cap Wolf. Oh my gosh.
No, it's not as good as
the worst section of the list where this issue has some sensitive topics.
This is not as good as at 383 Uncanny X-Men 195. It was a dark and stormy night. It's better than Brood Trouble in the Big Easy at 387.
I would say that this is okay. So here's the thing. I was going to say that this is handled better than X-Statix 13 to 18. But I think it's only handled better because X-Statix 13 to 18 punted on doing the Princess Di thing.
Yeah.
Which would have moved it into legendary territory. And I know that Spider-Man and the X-Men 1 and 2 has one of the most perfect panels of all time, but I don't know if that makes up for that rest of that issue.
No, I would put this right above 384, which is Ultimate Spider-Man Jump the Shark, which is the Bendis body swap.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. So this is going to be our new 384 New Mutants number 45. But Larry Bodine is not the only sort of misunderstood, forgotten mutant in
Larry Bodine's not the only dead mutant kid.
History of
a lot more.
The X-Men. Zach, I had not read this next issue, but you pointed it out to me as we were planning it. And this one has an interesting context too, which you pointed out. This is Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey doing Generation Hope number 9. This, instead of Larry Bodine, we have a character whose name is Zishan.
So this issue comes out in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, there was a lot in the news about gay teenagers committing suicide because, I mean, like, this is 2011. It's not even legal to be married in the entire country at that point. Like, this is a rough time. And we looked up a little bit. We actually found an interview with Axel Alonso about this entire era where he says we're aware of things like the recent spate of teen suicides, and there've been a number of stories pitched to comment on it.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't published most of those stories because we didn't think they were appropriate. And I want to be clear right here, because this is a big difference on Marvel from 14 years ago, right as they were being purchased by Disney, and Marvel, I would say now. Alonso says, we didn't think they were appropriate. There's a semicolon here, because it's not that we can't touch these hot topics. It's because, quote, they didn't handle the subject matter in a manner that we thought was the Marvel statement.
Mm.
And that will be coming. This is what I'm missing about comics. Like, say what you will about Alonso, but the point was, no, we are creating art. We have a mission, a duty to have a view, have a perspective, have a statement on these things, even if they're controversial.
Well, it is the difference between a comic book that's interested in, like you said, engaging with the real world and what's happening, as Marvel Comics said they were about the world outside your window, or are interested in being an IP farm that just, pushes forth stories because we have to make stuff with these characters. Now, this particular issue is coming at a very interesting time. The It Gets Better project was started in 2010. And it's not that this character is explicitly gay, but it does seem, based on the, the stuff that we found, that this was Gillen and McKelvey trying to talk about the subject. And
yeah,
it's
this
done.
was explicitly their statement on it. And
Yeah.
that was known around the Marvel offices before this came out.
Yes.
Like, this issue is solicited as just an important issue, but doesn't comment directly on what's happening here.
No. So, Generation Hope as a book so far has centered around hope and the five lights, and the new generation of mutants that is starting to sprout up around the world. The issue starts with them checking in with one of the cuckoos in Cerebro. Hey, we seen anybody? What's the deal? Do we have to suit up? Whatever. And it's done in a very like laid back manner. And we cut to this scene in it looks like a college campus.
Yeah, I mean, they have a beer and they're in a dorm room.
Yeah, and we have these three college kids just kind of, shooting the breeze, having a conversation. One of them is saying some fairly anti-mutant things. The other one
He's also wearing a shirt that says bacon is a vegetable. So he's the Redditor.
Yes.
Of the group.
Yeah. There's mild pushback on these ideas, but yet we also find out that thought this was an interesting detail to the story, that there are books published about the freakiest mutants, and almost like a Ripley's Believe Or Not.
There absolutely would be.
But kids get these books. They're like gifted these books, and so they reinforce the anti-mutant hysteria. And as this conversation is taking place, Zishan's mutant power, which appears to be to melt, and is not attractive at all. It's pretty physically disgusting. It happens. It happens as they're having this conversation, and we go from a talky issue with a lot of conversation to a silent issue, where we see that there does seem to be some, are we trying to get the mutant out of the bathroom? He does come out and looks like he's defending himself with a kitchen knife, and then disappears into the bathroom. And as Generation Hope, the team, arrives on the scene, the implication is that this young mutant has taken his life. So it's very much an issue. It's trying to tackle something very, very seriously. I'm interested to hear how successful you think it is.
I think as a piece of craft, I mean, Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey make very good comics together. They had been from Jump Street with Phonogram. Like, they continue that here. From a craft level, I think this works really well. Unlike the Claremont story, where it feels preachy this feels like it is being the lens on a story. Like that's what Gillen and McKelvey want to be. They want to almost document something like this is just a piece of realism, not a piece of like drama, if that makes sense. They want to show everything warts and all about what's going on, and they want to show how this event impacts the people around them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go.
I was just going to say, I mean, what's interesting is that as the lights approach this scene, Transonic realizes something is very wrong and jets out of the plane to try and, do something.
And Transonic's the character that has the, I would say, strongest sense of fairness and right and wrong in this book.
Yeah. But we get, this interesting, I mean, there's another scene that we got to talk about, which I don't think
we
works
will talk
as well.
About that scene.
But the idea that this is a superhero team that, superheroes save the world, but don't always have the ability to make individual impact and save everybody. And how tragic that is, because that's reflected in our real world, is that it's very, very difficult to, save everybody, even though we wish we could. The part of the issue that I think works less well is the coda to this, which involves Zero basically using his powers. It's implied that he is going to kill the kid who was bullying Zishan, and is stopped by Wolverine.
Okay, hold on. No, if that's your issue with it, I think that from a craft standpoint, like it's an odd note as a standalone issue. I think that having Zero be the character that is like, no, something needs to be done about this, is a really good note for the overall story that Gillen is telling, where Zero is the villain of all of this. Like, he will betray him. He is the bad one.
Yeah.
And yet it is showing that even if they don't agree with him or they think he's crazy or whatever, he's doing this from a place of like, no, I also believe that I believe in the Mutant Project. I believe in all of this, just in a different way that other people do. And I think that's a really good piece of characterization. I also think that using Wolverine, one who has had, I would say, even if he has a very flexible idea of killing, he does not like to go out of his way and murder people. Like, if he can help it, murder finds him. He tries not to find murder. But also, he has that savior complex where, no, he will take all of the murder onto his own back. And he does this with Rachel to the point of, honestly, absurdity at one point. He does this with the Black and White X-Force team. He does this just the next issue with Oya.
Mm-hmm.
When Schism comes up. Like,
right.
I do see Wolverine being like, kid, I know. I get it. Once you go down that road, you don't go back. Like, I like that. I do like that as a character beat for Zero specifically, and that scene for him. I don't think the scene works in this book. Like, I think it's wild to have that as it feels like a weird way to end this book.
Yes. We're just trying to address a larger tragedy by pinning on this character development at the end of it. But I also I don't know. I mean, it's quick. This, especially because so many of the pages lack dialogue, it flies. You're required to slow down your eyes and to keep up. But the story is designed the way that McKelvey draws the pages for you to read it quickly and for this thing to happen very suddenly. So
that's the part where I like what Gillen and McKelvey are doing as a team here, because especially it starts to speed up and build that, like, oh, the pages are turning quick, something's happening.
Yes.
And you have to try and keep up, and almost your hands are moving faster than your eyes in some cases. And then to the point when most of the dialogue, or when all of the dialogue drops out for the first time, like no bubble of anything, it's when Laura is going transonic. Like,
yeah,
it is as a thing to show, no, this is how fast she's going, that we can't even pretend to do sound anymore. It's gone.
Yeah.
That, again, there's a lot of... Jamie McKelvey and Kieran Gillen know how to make very well-crafted comic books. I say shocking the world here.
What I will say, the biggest detriment to this issue is, what Claremont has going for him with the Larry Bodine character is tons of really good thought bubbles, so that you do get a sense.
Know Larry.
You get to know Larry. You get to know how all the characters around him are thinking about the things that are happening in that issue. This doesn't have that. So it feels much more slight, I will say, and doesn't seem to have as much depth or nuance that, I would like to know a little bit more about these characters than getting to know them for a couple pages and then the one having this terrible thing happen. So I don't think this is as successful. However, I think that it's less finger waggy in a way that I appreciate.
I like this better, but it's also my wife likes to say I'm a very subtle person, which I feel like people on this podcast who listen to it are going to be like, no, Zach's the wild and crazy one. But I do tend to like more subtle dynamics and less overt storytelling than you get in the Larry Bodine issue. And I think this one works a little bit for me. It works better, but I also know that this is an issue that Gillen talked about. Hey, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. That's why Jamie is the backup artist on this, because there wasn't an artist that he trusted more on something that he knew would be a big hit than Jamie.
Yeah.
It was something that he had this thing read by folks multiple times for a sensitivity read, out of his way to do this. Cause no, if I'm going to do this, I want to make sure that I'm doing this the best way that I can.
Well, let me ask you.
He wants to do it from a very specific perspective. He's doing it from, I think he wants us to have that same level of disconnect from the character that the rest of Generation Hope has. I believe he's making a choice to not characterize Zishan as much as Larry Bodine gets characterized. I think it is valid to argue, is that the right choice or not? And what I think is more, that is what you sacrifice by making that choice. You sacrifice an emotional connection to that character. So in a vacuum, it may not work as well when you want that emotional connection to be, how is this group of characters that you've been following reacting to this, versus the Larry Bodine one. It's sad because we like Larry.
Yeah. I also think it's a symptom of decompression versus compression in comics and how much story we're willing to put on a page.
Yes, but Claremont was always willing to put more story than anybody else on a page.
So
it was have him and Alan Moore.
We do have some other Generation Hope in the list. We have the first 4 issues down at 618. I think this is better than that. I'm curious if you think this is better than at 533, the issues that come after this, 10 to 11, which is the Schism arc.
I think this is better than the Schism stuff. I think this, to me, this one works pretty darn well. I think it has its issues, but it's hard for me to look at X-Men Black Mojo #1 at 454 and say that's a better comic than this.
I don't think this is as good as the Larry Bodine issue, which we put at 384.
I am willing to concede that it should go below the Larry Bodine issue. But Adam, is this a better comic than what's at 400 right now, which is Wolverine, the Black Blade arc. But I also don't like that arc very much.
Yeah.
The first 3 issues of Wolverine.
Yeah. This is not as good as Glob Loves Man Kills at 394.
Then I'm putting it above the Todd issues of Spider-Man.
Okay.
Is that fair?
That's fine. So this is our new 395 Generation Hope, number 9. And we got one more.
And I think this is interesting. So as we were looking up Generation Hope, there was another quote, and it's actually the follow-up quote that Axel Alonso has.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared it with you because it was the most, that's what's different. Why I haven't been feeling comics the same way as I had in the past. Because what Axel says here is, after all that, be topical because you have something to say, or even better, because you feel that you may have something new to say. Again, the solution to a problem like, whatever, teen suicide in this case, can't be found in superhero beating up a bully. The message is something fundamentally different than that. But I want to emphasize that at one point, Marvel was saying, do you have something to say? Great, say it. Do you have something new to say? Yes, let's do it. And I will say that the last story that we're talking about on this list, 2002's miniseries Muties, has something to say, and I would say something new to say. And I think the argument is it saying it well? Not does it have something to say, but there is perspective here, and I think this is a weird comic, Adam. Like, I don't even know where to begin with Muties.
Let me give it a shot. So I think it's interesting that this is before we get started with this is a very dark and depressing series.
This is a Bill Jemas, Joe Quesada 2002 comic.
Yeah. It is written by a writer who is probably best known for his work on the Archie Sonic the Hedgehog comic, Carl Bollers. So that adds an interesting wrinkle to it.
He did the Emma Frost series as well for X-Men.
Yes. People. But pencils and finishes on the first issue by Sam Salgood and Peter Ferguson. On the second issue, we have pencils by Patrick Spazianti, inks by Danny Miki and Victor Olazaba. On the third issue, we have art by Dean Haspiel. On the fourth issue, we have art by Trent Kaniuga. On the fifth issue, we have art by Charlie Adlard. And on the sixth issue, we have art by Sam Salgood again. Each one of these takes place in a very, very different place on the globe. It also, in each of them, will involve a specific mutant and the troubles that their powers get them into, and or how what it is that them being a mutant gets into conflict with their situation in their world. So I'll just do a quick synopsis. The first issue does seem to be about a sort of like reject, nerd, dork, whatever, who turns out not to be the mutant, who then kills a bully who's a mutant, who had stretch powers to be good at basketball. The second issue is about a young Japanese boy who has an abusive father who has the ability to mind control toys, and unfortunately gets into such a physical altercation with his abusive parent that he flies out of a high-rise window and ends up stuck inside of a toy.
He is brain dead, but he's living on in his Kamen Rider action figure.
Yes. The third issue is specifically about a Ugandan child soldier who can stop time or slow time. The fourth issue happens in Rio de Janeiro. The fifth issue
about drugs. It's about drugs. Just so you know what the issue is, it's about drugs.
Yeah, the fifth issue involves junkies in Sweden, and the sixth issue is basically about an explodey boy who gets forced to work for the IRA. Is it the IRA?
So it is the IRA.
Yeah.
This is all about like real world things. Like, what if mutants were in the real world and dealt with real world issues? And I will say, I'm not sure Carl Bollers is the right guy to do this. I think his grasp exceeds his reach. Is what's happening here.
It is a bold thing to try to tell these 6 distinct stories from such a global perspective. And I applaud the effort because I do think that it is not always successful. Some of these issues are just bad. The second issue in particular is not helped by the art, but the Japanese, abusive parent and the guy mind controlling it's just a bad issue of comics. but I will say it's not the typical kinds of things that we expect from our X-Men comics to have stories about. The issues that really stood out to me are the Ugandan child soldier issue is fascinating. The Swedish junkies is something just fresh and new that I mean, it's not the kind of thing that you would normally even see in a Marvel comic. And especially
Right.
the final issue with this IRA thing. I mean, they're also, it's very important to point out that each one of these issues is told in such a distinct artistic style. There is no continuity between the six, so that they get a unique perspective, both from the characters, but also from the art and the way that it's depicted. I think that's a really bold choice. And it's not always successful, but it's definitely swinging.
It is swinging. And I love it when someone takes a big swing, like they're trying. I feel like one challenge with this is that because you have 20 pages to introduce all this stuff, and you're essentially, for most of your audience, introducing a culture, a problem in that culture, and a character on top of it, and then have to do a full arc. Some of it runs into a little bit tropey, stereotypy stuff for me, just because it's trying to touch so many different things.
Sure.
And there's elements of truth in all of those things, but again, it's 2002. It's sometimes you look a little side-eyed on some of this. I'd also say some of the art is not doing what you need it to, specifically on the second and fourth issue for me.
Yeah.
I don't think that Sam Salgood's art on the sixth issue works for this issue, but I really see the artistry in what he's doing. I just don't think he's the right fit for what they're doing, but is very, like, obviously a very good good guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I was struck by how depressing these stories are. Almost
For
every
you, because
single.
this feels like just as depressing as most Joe Quesada, Bill Jemas era comics were. Like,
Well, I mean, each
it
one of
feels
these
of that
stories.
moment.
Yeah, I did text you as I was reading this series about, like, oh my God, like we didn't realize we were doing this, but like I was very happy to see that at least in some of the Muties issues, like some of them survive, because as you're reading Muties, you're like, oh God, each one of these is going to involve like a kid being killed. And that's dark, that is
And only
really
most of
dark.
them. Only most of them involve a kid being killed.
Yes. But I will say that it is, as much as the mutant metaphor extends to a wide variety of things, that doesn't always mean that we get a diverse look into creators working on these books. So to see Carl Bollers, who is a man of color, writing these stories, and to have multiple different artists taking a look at this in drawing in ways that we're not used to seeing in an X-Men comic, I really am kind of impressed that Marvel took this swing. I think it's got about a 500 batting average here. I think
At best.
three out of the six kind of work. Three
Okay.
really,
If
yeah,
it's kind of work, I'll agree with you.
yeah, yeah. But
Like,
I'm impressed that they tried. That
you
they went to such lengths to try and tell something serious.
you get such a variety of art. Like, you go from Peter Ferguson, who at this point does, and I don't know what he was doing before this, but doesn't do comics, does fine art. Just like weird fine art, which is actually really cool, and I like.
Mhm.
I'm looking at his stuff right now. To guys like Charlie Adlard, who, what does he do? The Walking Dead. The guy from The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
From The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Like, you go from conventional, you get Saul Good stuff, which is very much like he worked with Harvey Pekar on stuff, like collaborated with him. That's his vibe. It's underground comics, zany stuff. Like, I don't know. You get such a good mix of everything that I don't. I think saying that 3 out of 5 kind of work is almost being too generous with this comic, but it is hard for me not to look at Muties, a comic that is trying to do something new, is pushing the limits, is trying to have a perspective and an opinion, and say, well, is it bad? It's hard for me not to say, well, I at least appreciate all of this.
Yeah, I have to applaud the effort, because what we're constantly asking for is unique voices, for a diverse group of creators to come and work in this world and to talk about interesting things. And whether this succeeds or not, it is at least trying to do that. You know, it is not just more of the same. It is trying something pretty bold and different and new that feels a lot more like I'm reading Dark Horse Presents than I am reading X-Men. And I applaud it for that. Now, I think you and I agree. I don't know that it's like terribly successful, but I do think
that's the thing. As I read Muties, I wish it was better.
Yes, but I'm impressed at you know, really the audacity to try and tell these kinds of stories within a world that often will not tell stories like this, or try to. So where do we go with this? I think this is clearly the least successful of the three.
It is the least successful. What I'm trying to find, where do we have X Factor Volume 2 on this list?
Oh, good point. That's a good
Was
comparison.
exactly like it was coming out at the same time.
Yeah.
And also, if you search X Factor, it doesn't work.
X Factor Volume 2 is all the way up in 91. We really liked that one.
Yeah, it's not as good as X Factor 92. Okay, so never mind. Bad comparison. Hold on. Emma Frost. Okay, this is better than Emma Frost, though. Emma Frost 7 to 12 is at 892.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. But
I think it's better than that.
Yes, but I think we're in the 800s, you know?
Well, what's it? I mean, like
this isn't better than Wildcats X-Men at 816.
It's not better than Wildcats X-Men. Thank you for that.
Here's what I'll say. I do think this is better than Return of Wolverine at 823, even though McNiven is doing a beautiful Barry Windsor Smith job on 2 of those issues. That reeked of commercialism, and this is kind of inspiring that it's trying something bold and new.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Let's put it above that, below Spotlight on the Starjammers, because that's just a nonsense story. But I tell you what, Dave Cockrum is having the time of his life doing it.
That is a fun one. That is good. So that's our new 823 Muties.
Go read Muties. I think Muties is interesting enough to be like, I see what they were doing there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we've got. I want to thank Ian again for being a supporter. If you want to be like Ian, patreon.com/Battle of the Atom. Let's do it. Adam, what do you got going on?
So folks can always follow on social, Adam Reck on Blue Sky and Instagram, new stuff popping up occasionally on Comics XF. As this episode is, when is this episode coming out, Zach?
Monday,
which is the
4:20 a.m.
The 29th.
Do folks know that I have for years been putting this out at 4:20 a.m.?
Initially, that's funny.
Initially, the idea was to launch an episode before people go to work, because when we launched this podcast, people didn't all have data, so you were still downloading things at your house before you left for the day.
Yeah.
So that seemed like a good strategy. And then I thought it would be funny to do the funny weed number. It goes out on the 29th, by the way, Adam.
No, I'm just thinking about it because New York Comic Con is coming up. I will be there on Thursday and Friday for the convention, interviewing people. So just, if you're going to be there, don't be afraid to say hello. I'll say that again on our next episode. Zach, what are we doing next week?
I don't know. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it after the recording's done, because we don't have anything written down. But until then, folks, this has been Battle of the Hour, and we hope you survived the experience.
Get it!